Is this creepy yet? Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Motley Stew Show, or what is currently still called the Motley Stew Show, but in the near future will be something slightly different. This week we're going to take a look at a couple of the stories that came out in the political news sphere, see if we can't pick them apart a little bit, and give you enough information that maybe if you're interested you can look into them further. But these are things that happened this week that I believe are actually important, maybe more important than some of the noise that we see coming out of all the different stations. Now first off, let's talk about 9/11, and not specifically about the attack or what happened on 9/11, but the continuing effects not only for the families of those people who were lost in 9/11, but also how the government is continuing to respond to it. Now there were a lot of reports and a lot of investigations that were ordered by the government and ordered by outside sources into what happened on 9/11 to see exactly who it was to blame. Now of course Osama bin Laden was found to be the ringmaster of the entire attack, but obviously an attack of that scale was more than just one person. And for a long time there has been a belief that the country of Saudi Arabia had a lot to do with what was going on, even though they are one of our big allies in the Middle East. Now initially part of that suspicion was fueled by the fact that 15 of the 19 hijackers were Saudis. But up until now there hasn't been really much else to go on. But now because of a congressional inquiry into 9/11, there's about 28 pages that are currently being argued over to see whether or not they should be released to the public. They should be declassified. And leaks coming out about what is contained in those 28 pages supposedly is proof that ties Saudi Arabia directly to the 9/11 attacks. Now without those pages actually even becoming fully public yet, the US government has gone into action, or at least parts of it. The US Senate this week on Tuesday voted unanimously to pass a bill allowing families of the 9/11 victims to directly sue the country of Saudi Arabia. Now this isn't the first time that something like this has happened. Families of those victims have tried before to sue the royal family, but because of an old law, there are certain countries that have gained immunity from these types of lawsuits. But this bill reckons to fix that. Now it hasn't gone to the House yet, but if you see something unanimously voted on in the Senate, you can bet that the House is going to go close to that. Now the twist to this is the Obama administration is against it. He's already vowed that he will veto this when it lands on his desk. Probably because of the fact that Saudi Arabia is one of our allies and they'd like to keep it that way. And allowing people from your country to sue them or their royal family for however many millions of dollars probably isn't going to do a lot to keep familial relations. But sadly for Obama, if this goes to the House and does nearly as well as it did in the Senate, his veto is purely going to be theater, because all they'll need is 2/3 of each of the chambers to override his veto, and they've already done it in the Senate. So we'll wait and see what happens, but if this does get passed, you can be sure there are a number of lawsuits will hit the table very quickly, and then the question will become, how does Saudi Arabia respond? Who knows? My back is still screwed up. Oh no, my battery's dying. Well, I'm gonna keep going until this dies. Maybe I should just try to get through this and hopefully I don't have to wait for the whole thing to recharge. So earlier in the week in Nevada was the Democratic Caucus, and of course the opponents of Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, and things went quite awry. A number of Bernie Sanders supporters were angry and caused a lot of violence and fights over the fact that a number of them had been disqualified. Now, the reason why they were disqualified wasn't anything really sinister. It was a bunch of really kind of banal rules, things that they never actually registered to become a delegate. They showed up late and didn't sign in, you know, various paper pushing type of things. But rules be rules, and those people didn't qualify. But the people that were there, many of the Bernie supporters, found this to be yet another in a string of things that the Democratic Party as a whole and the nomination committee are doing to basically stop Bernie Sanders from getting delegates and possibly taking the nomination away from Hillary Clinton. They believe the deck has been continually stacked against Bernie. So they got angry and things got out of hand. Now the event was actually supposed to stop at 7 p.m. that night, but it kept going till almost about midnight till the hotel, the casino where this was being held at, actually threw them all out. Now this isn't exactly the first time that something like this has happened during the primary season, but we're used to seeing this from the Trump supporters. And I'm not saying all Trump supporters are like this, but this is where that kind of violence has happened before, between the supporters of Trump and the anti-Trump party. But the Sanders party has had huge rallies, bigger than everybody else, no matter what Trump says. Sanders has had the biggest rallies throughout the primary, day in and day out. And all of them have been very peaceful rallies. They've been energetic, but they've been peaceful. So the violence is something new to Bernie's campaign. But on a sad note, when questioned about this violence, Senator Bernie Sanders didn't actually disavow his supporters or their actions. He definitely didn't condone the violence, but he also said that the violence was being blown out of proportion, and that this was all, again, another way to attack him from the Democratic Party. He released a statement in part saying, "Within the last few days, there have been a number of criticisms made against my campaign organization. Party leaders in Nevada, for example, claim that the Sanders campaign has a penchant for violence. That is nonsense. Our campaign has held giant rallies all across this country, including in high crime areas, and there have been 0 reports of violence." And while that is true, whether or not there were 0 reports before, there are plenty of reports now from Nevada. And from someone who was actually there, Senator Barbara Boxer, Democrat from California, said this: "This group of about 100 were very vocal, and I can't describe it. Disrespectful doesn't even explain it. It was worse than that." And part of this violence became very specific, and it was directed at the party chair of Nevada, Roberta Lang. There were emails, texts, phone calls, and death threats included in that. In an interview about all of this, she said, "It's been vile. It's been threatening messages, threatening my family, threatening my life, threatening my grandchild." And in fact, if you want to hear some of those voicemails, I put a link to them down below. Now, I'm never going to say that there's a lot of common ground between Sanders and Trump, but currently in his camps, you've got one common storyline, which is the imposter from the elite party is breaking through. Trump has already become the presumptive nominee and knocked out actually all the politicians. Sanders has been in politics most of his life, but he's been an independent, and he has been outside of the party elite. So he's seen as kind of the same type of person on the Democrat side. And now his camp is becoming not only energized like the Trump camp is, but they're becoming as conspiratorial, thinking that everything that's going on every time Bernie doesn't win has been some sort of dirty trick against him. And I'm not saying that the Democratic Party hasn't been doing certain things, but there isn't exactly proof of that. And I can understand why they don't want him, because they don't think he can actually win a general election. But now that we know that Trump is the opponent, personally, I don't think either of them can lose to Trump, but that's just me. So for those people also out there who are thinking that Sanders should quit and just unify the Democratic Party behind Clinton, no, he has no reason to, and he shouldn't. He should take this all the way to the committee and see what happens there. People should feel that the system at least gives them a voice, whether or not their voice wins in the argument at the end. But should Sanders stand up and say to his supporters that they should not do that they should not actually leave death threats towards other party members? Yes, he should say that, and he shouldn't back down. Now, the last story for this week is actually a new petition that is being sent to Obama's desk. It's a 5-page petition to give freedom, to give clemency to Leonard Peltier, who's a Native American who's been in jail for 40 years. He's originally put there when he was 31 years old, and now he's 71 years old. The crime for which he was arrested for and convicted was the brutal killing of 2 FBI agents, point blank. But this happened during a large gunfight on Native American territory, and there were many, many people involved. But only 3 people were arrested, and the other 2 people that were arrested were eventually just let go. They were never even brought to trial. And for some reason, Leonard got pinned with everything, and he was given 2 consecutive life sentences. Now, this isn't anything new. Since his arrest, Leonard Peltier became a cause celeb for the human rights movement. People have been trying to get him out of jail for decades. I even remember my parents going to rallies talking about freeing him. I had posters in my house when I was a kid showing his face and saying "Free Leonard" underneath. Now, in this new petition, it says this in part: Mr. Peltier has exhausted all appeals and is next eligible to apply for parole in 2024, in the unlikely event that he lives that long. The Parole Commission has yielded to the objections of the FBI and the DOJ in denying Mr. Peltier's applications for parole at every turn. Effectively, this petition represents the last chance for Mr. Peltier's lifetime for the government to take curative and/or reconciliatory action. Of course, this isn't the first time a petition has been delivered to the president to try to get clemency for Leonard. Last one was actually during the Clinton administration, but when that happened, 500 plus people from the FBI and other agencies and their friends petitioned in front of the White House against Leonard getting freedom. And the petition was never heard. Now, this time around, the petition that's being sent to Obama isn't just from lawyers and human rights activists. You've also got Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Coretta Scott King, Amnesty International, and several Native American tribes. And before this, there have been many, many people, politicians and others, that have been calling out for his freedom. Because the facts of the case are actually quite gray. Whether or not you believe he did or didn't do it, the facts that seem to have come out don't give any sort of definitive proof, especially something strong enough for 2 consecutive life sentences. And he's already spent 40 of those years in jail. At this point, what else is there to gain from keeping him there if you can't show a convincing argument that he actually did it? It's already been admitted by the government previously that they can't be sure that he was the one who pulled the trigger killing those 2 FBI agents, but they're not going to do anything about it. Now, I've also put that petition in the link below, and you can also go to another site to look into some of the facts of this case. But remember, the site that I'm linking to showing the facts is actually called freeleonard.org, so take note of the fact that they have a definite viewpoint on this case. So those are the stories that I think were interesting this week. If you have anything else that you think I should have talked about, leave in the comments below. Maybe we can start a discussion about it. Thanks again for watching another episode of the Motley Stew Show.
Liam, ba 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 ba. Hey, over here. Hey.
He's like, I'm checking something out. Hold on.
Hey, Bubba. Oh, that was so cute.
Yeah, yum yum.
Oh, I know.
Hi.
I'm so proud of myself.
What you doing?
The last 3. Oh, my phone is ringing. Hold on, by the time I get down there.
Dancing in the crib.
Are you proud of yourself?
Now, of course, we all found out that, everything pointed to a song. But to continue,